Every so often, a video game character comes along that, for whatever reason, just rubs people the wrong way. Large numbers of people unite in their dislike for these characters, and things just snowball from there. But though we too are guilty of being annoyed by various characters in games to varying degrees, there are some that we feel have received far more flack than they deserve. In this feature, we're going to talk about 10 such characters who are largely disliked that we actually don't mind that much. Note there are spoilers ahead for most of the games we'll be talking about, so if we begin to discuss a game you don't want spoiled, move on to the next entry. Jacob, Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2's ensemble cast of characters is one of the greatest you'll ever see in a video game. One character, however, is a bit underwhelming. Jacob, who is by Shepard's side from the very beginning of the game to the end, pales in comparison to his counterparts. There isn't anything that's particularly wrong with him, he's just a bit boring. But while that's a fair criticism, viewed on his own merits, Jacob is a solid character. He has an interesting backstory, his interactions with Shepard and Miranda are always engaging, and his history with Cerberus adds a lot to the story. He's no Garrus or Mordin, of course, but he isn't too bad either. Zeke Infamous. One could argue that the Infamous games are full of characters that are widely hated, or are at least quite derisive, but Zeke is a prime example of a character who successfully turns things around for himself. In Infamous 1, he's an annoying, petty, lazy nuisance, and if the first game is the only one in the series you've played, you would be forgiven for not caring for him too much. Over time, however, Zeke actually turns into a much more sympathetic character thanks to some actual proper character growth, and though there's still quite a few fans of the series who aren't too crazy about him, we feel he deserves far more love than he gets. Ryder, Mass Effect Andromeda. Following in the footsteps of Commander Shepard, one of the strongest and most formidable protagonists we've ever seen in games, is by no means an easy task, and it's fair to say that Sarah and Scott Ryder fell way short of those lofty expectations. But much like all of Mass Effect Andromeda itself, though the Ryder twins don't hold a candle to the series' past, there's still a lot to like about them. Their youthful energy brings something new to the table, and their banter with their crew and squad mates helps add a lot of personality to their character. Perhaps if the game's writing had been a bit more consistent and the voice acting had been a little bit better, the Ryder twins would have not been on the receiving end of quite so much criticism. Abby, The Last of Us Part 2. If we talk about the first half of The Last of Us Part 2 and the first half only, it's easy to understand why Abby is hated so fiercely by so many people. She kills Joel after all, and kills him in a brutal fashion. But once the game switches gears at a little over the halfway point and puts you in Abby's shoes, it manages to do the impossible. Over time, The Last of Us Part 2 shows you her side of the story. It shows you what makes her tick, how she interacts with the people she values, how she goes out of her way to save the lives of two strangers, and how her actions in the beginning of the game may not have been easy to agree with for the players, but were, at the very least, understandable. Solid writing, as well as an excellent performance by Laura Bailey, only served to make her character that much more memorable.
Is he still in the fucking building? Abby.
No!
Abby, don't look.
Dad! Dad! No! No!
Tom Nook, Animal Crossing: New Horizons. Over the years, loan shark / ruthless businessman, business raccoon, Tom Nook has drawn the ire of many Animal Crossing fans. He keeps forcing you into massive loans, and directly or indirectly, keeps burdening you with backbreaking work. Why wouldn't people dislike him? Well, he's actually quite lenient with his loans when you think about it. He never sets a deadline, he never asks for interest, and he's the backbone of the Animal Crossing community. What's not to like? Roman Bellic, Grand Theft Auto 4. Oh, Roman. You're a perfect example of a character who isn't really that annoying, but gets that widespread reputation regardless because of one meme. Roman Bellic, the man who loves bowling, wants to bowl all the time, and will stop at nothing to get you to go bowling with him.
Cousin, hello. How about we go bowling?
Nico, this is a great American activity. We bowl together and you pick me up in next town.
It doesn't matter what Nico is doing, he could be in the midst of an intense police chase, a furious firefight, a social engagement with someone else. Roman Bellic will invariably call him and ask him to go bowling with him. And sure, that can be annoying, but he just wants to spend some quality time with his cousin. What's so wrong with that? And really, who doesn't love to go bowling? Dutch Vanderlund, Red Dead Redemption. Given the fact that Dutch Vanderlund has been responsible for making life miserable for not one, but two beloved Red Dead Redemption protagonists, it's not hard to see why people dislike him. He is, after all, the villain, unlikable by design, and the sheer injustice of his betrayal of trust of essentially everyone in his gang, especially Arthur, burns hot in the hearts of many series fans. But really, before Micah came along, Dutch was a man of principles, a man who valued loyalty above all else, a man who would do anything for his band of misfits. Does he deserve to be called out for being swayed by Micah so easily? Absolutely he does. But that shouldn't erase the fact that for a long, long time, he was exactly the kind of father figure many in his gang had seen him as for so long. Ryden, Metal Gear Solid 2. Given the fact that Metal Gear Solid 2 pulled the rug out from under its players and made them play as this wimpy, whiny kid instead of Solid Snake, meant that Ryden was always fighting an uphill battle. He never had much of a chance in the game, especially not when Solid Snake himself was a major character right alongside him to show players just what they were missing out on. But give credit where credit is due, Ryden turned into an absolute badass in subsequent appearances. He went from being that whiny kid to becoming a lethal cyborg ninja who just won't quit. Hell, even when he's lost both his arms, he fights off bad guys while holding his katana in his mouth. It's not hard to like Ryden after that. Mia Winters, Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 as a whole didn't have particularly strong characters, with the exception of a couple of the Bakers, which is disappointing for an RE game. Mia Winters, however, gets more criticism than any other character in the game. And while she is indeed the source of most of the problems you run into that game, a lot of that criticism is unwarranted. For starters, she's infected and has no control over her actions for most of the game, which means she can't really be blamed for many of them. On top of that, however, the reveal that she was actually a highly trained super agent all along does wonders for her character and makes her infinitely more interesting. She's definitely more interesting than Ethan, that's for sure. Rivali, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Given the fact that Rivali had a massive superiority complex nearly every time he appeared on screen, it's easy to see why so many Breath of the Wild fans don't like him that much. But you have to respect his skill. He's a gifted archer, and he combines that with his power of flight to great effect. Eventually, once he, or his ghost at any rate, is freed from the corrupting clutches of Calamity Ganon, he grudgingly comes to respect Link as well. So you know, all's well that ends well. And that wraps it up. If you like what we are doing, please consider subscribing to our channel, and don't forget to switch on the bell notification icon. That way you will never miss out on any of our videos.